Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever in the world you may happen to be. This is Talk About Your Community. I'm your host, Todd Nilsson with Clocktower Advisors. And on this show, if you've never been here before, we have a variety of guests who are involved with communities, community building, collaboration, whether in person or online, with kind of an emphasis on the online or the mixed world of these things. And today's no exception. We're going to have an incredible guest here, and we're going to get a little nerdy today, which is going to be fun, to talk a little bit about community building and Dungeons and Dragons. For those of you who aren't necessarily aware of the hobby, or it's sort of on the periphery of your knowledge, we'll do some quick upfront definitions about the game and sort of like why it's popular now and sort of some of the communities that have built up around it. But specifically, my guest, Josh Selesnick, is founder of Playing for Keeps, and he is he is running a business that actually brings playing the game of D&D into the enterprise for organizations for team building, trust building, collaboration building kind of work. And so it's a really unique take on taking something that's a hobby that is vastly popular right now and putting it into a business context to create value and trust and, dare I say, community building for people. So hopefully we get a lot of really cool, relevant stuff that comes out of today's conversation. And, as always, if you are here on the live stream, we'd love to hear from you, hear your questions, ideas, and comments. Or if you catch this on the replay, please drop in comments and questions. We try to respond to and reply to everything that comes up on this particular channel. If you happen to catch this on YouTube, or if you're catching it on LinkedIn live right now, you can always catch the replay over on the Clocktower Advisors channel on YouTube, and would absolutely welcome anybody that wants to subscribe over there, like or comment, and keep the conversation going there as well. So with that, and without any further ado, I do want to bring in Josh from Playing for Keeps. Josh, welcome to Talk About Your Community.
Oh man, thank you, Todd, for having me. I love your intro. You're so generous.
Well, you're doing amazing stuff. You and I have had a number of really cool conversations about the hobby in general, but really about your specific business idea. And I want to get into the origins of that. But I think maybe up front, we should probably spend a minute just, polling the audience and doing a little, I see one of the people in the audience said, curious who else plays D&D here, or any DMs out there. If you're on the stream and you are a D&D player, hit the like button and let us know if you're a gamer, or if you used to play D&D, or if you're still a current gamer. We'd love to hear from you, any of your comments and questions about things. But for those of us who are maybe joining the stream or kind of catching this on my YouTube channel at a later date, how do you usually introduce the idea of D&D to people that have not played the game ever before?
That sounds great. Yeah, we should do some definitions. Well, so the game is a collaborative storytelling game that usually takes place with 6 or 7 people, and there are some different roles that people play. But the main ones is you're either a player or a dungeon master, and there's always, sorry, it's my cat.
We're a pet-friendly show.
So there's either you're either playing as a player or a dungeon master, and the dungeon master is the facilitator. They're kind of the storyteller. They paint the world, and the player, you play a single character in that world. And it's similar to an RPG, if you played video games, where you have a character and they level up, but it's different in that it's a role-playing game. So you get to actually act out your character and speak for them and make decisions that aren't necessarily in like a tree of decisions that you can make. You make whatever seems plausible to you in that moment. And in that way, nobody knows what's going to happen. So that's kind of the bones of it, I think.
I love it, man. So that's terrific. And I think the only other thing that I would add, maybe you mentioned this and I didn't hear you, but a lot of the determination of whether people succeed or fail at something, unlike make-believe, where little kids will say, bang, you're dead. And the other kid will say, bang, you're dead. I don't know if kids still do that. Anyways, considering all the terrible things that are going on in the world today, but the determination of success or failure is determined with using
relegated to the dice.
Funny dice, right? Funny shaped dice.
I've got one right here. I've got these little 20-sided dice here.
There we go. Yeah, exactly. And so determining if you succeeded at picking a pocket or climbing a wall or persuading somebody to give you a chance at a quest is often determined by the roll of the dice, and that dice roll is modified somewhat by how skilled or unskilled the character you're playing happens to be. So it introduces an element of randomness to the game and a lot of fun. But one of the guests just asked, "Is there going to be a live stream recording?" Yes, this is going to be recording and up on YouTube immediately after. And you can also come back to it through the Clocktower Advisors company channel as well. So hope to see you. Tune back in afterwards and offer your comments. My personal confession is I am a longstanding unapologetic gamer since 1980. I've been playing Dungeons and Dragons all that time, and as well as a variety of other RPGs. I even now every 2 weeks I game with a group of people online via Facebook. And Josh, you've joined me a couple of times. We've had amazing times.
Yeah, you've been my DM a couple of times here. I've had the pleasure of being in your story.
And thank you for that. And you've been an amazing player. But part of what keeps me coming back to the game and that refreshes me about it is the creativity and storytelling elements of it, and really coming together with a small group of people and getting to know them a little better through these imaginary situations. I mean, you form friendships that last an entire lifetime through the hobby.
Yeah, you really do. And I mean, to get a little bit into my work, one thing that I'm constantly thinking about is taking the bonds that people build in those games and finding ways to build it out also in their real life relationships. So we'll have, I'll have like questions at the beginning that are kind of designed to help people get to know their characters sometimes. And sometimes I have questions that are designed to get people to know each other. And that's been kind of an interesting thing for me, is like, how can I make it so that by playing this game and building the relationships that, as people naturally build, make it so that they're really solid when they leave and they feel like, oh, wow, I could actually call that person if I needed something and they would pick up the phone and help me out.
Yeah, exactly. And and I think of one of the things that makes the game so lasting and forms those kinds of friendships is, despite the fact that you're play acting a character in a story, those characters, unlike something in a stage play, you're adopting a character or persona that you created yourself, and so it is some funhouse mirror reflection of yourself in one way or another. And like, we learn how other people act and interact with things, and so you get to know people by their deeds and the things that they do in those around the table experiences.
There's this great guy online who's a dungeon master named Brendan Lee Mulligan, and he has this line that he says where he's like, every character is me. Even if it's like someone super wacky and zany and they talk like this, like, it's still me. I'm always going to be coming. If it's someone really evil or strong, like, there's still, you have that, the idea is you have all these things. And if the character, say your character is like, an elven ranger, they've got pointy ears, they fire with a bow, they hunt in the woods, right? You think of that, I think of that as like a stained glass window, the elven ranger. But the light that makes it visible is the individual player. And if Todd is playing that character, I'm playing that character, something totally different is going to come through. Different things are going to be emphasized and are going to change. So, well, the cutout is one way. The essence of who you are, as in all acting, is the art form. So that's,
I love that. And that's one of the things that I think I had shared with you as I was thinking about like online identities, like people who sign up for an online community and they create a profile for themselves or a persona. They're creating a character. That's not, that's the stained glass window. And they shine through it, through what they do and say within that space. It's the same kinds of things that we do in online communities to a somewhat lesser extent. But, there is some, like, depending on the kind of community you join, you're probably filtering your identity in some ways and kind of, pushing through. This is just an extension of that, really kind of like pushing it all the way out into a liminal space where you can experiment, with being in other situations and being an elf ranger or, being a magician or whatever fantasy trope you want to play into for those kinds of experiences.
Yeah, I mean, you've been building online communities for a while now, yeah, and so there's definitely, I'm sure you've experienced a lot of users, and I just think it's so cool how long you've been a part of that journey, like from the beginning of LinkedIn into the current iterations.
Well, I feel fortunate that I've gotten to experience the things that I have, and all the friends that I've made along the way, including yourself. So we met maybe a couple of months ago, I think, and have had these kind of ongoing conversations. So we've given a little background about sort of the game and the hobby. It's one of the most popular games in the world now, and
Yeah,
there's
Hasbro. Great.
millions of players. It's owned by Hasbro, big toy company, but it's like one of their most popular and profitable lines of business and what they do. Just to give you an idea, like this isn't kids playing in their basement anymore. There's like adults. I know people at Google that are playing, on the weekends and all that. So it's something that has, come into its own as an acceptable and legitimate hobby. I would love it if one day, and I think it could be, if Dungeons and Dragons could become the new form of, doing business over golf, and kind of pulling, a hobby into sort of, business acumen and thinking about that, which is what you're doing with your business. Can you tell a little bit of the narrative of like how you came about the idea for playing for keeps, and sort of, what that is, and sort of how that's developed for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have felt for a while, I was doing a leadership course, team development and leadership during the pandemic, which was, by the way, one of the only things that was able to adapt and go online of my life in the very beginning of the pandemic. So I was very impressed with like the versatility of these folks and their commitment to delivering their curriculum and everything. But I was doing that at the same time that I was running these games, and taking a lot of what I learned into that. And I started to see opportunities for development with my friends in the beginning, but opportunities for them to learn to communicate more thoroughly with each other, learn to commit to their choices on a deeper level, and learn to be independent and not look to the leadership, because there's a tendency with players to look to the dungeon master, like, what do we do next? And the story can be very self-directed. So I would often say, like, I've told you where you are. I've told you what the circumstances are. You have these problems that you need to handle. You're the new leader of a village of people who have been isolated for 100 years and seem like they've got some issues in the town. What are you going to do about it? And then letting them debate and come to a conclusion of how they want to move forward with turning this particular town into like a viable township that they can add to their retinue and stuff like that. And then the pleasure on my part of being able to throw challenges in their way that make that harder, because life is going to come with challenges, and D&D is a place where you can face challenges that seem terrifying and really difficult and still come together and get that heroic kind of like boost. So all of that is to say, I guess I realized that it had a lot of applications to develop things like good communication and trust. On the trust aspect, it has this awesome capacity. When you're telling a story and nobody knows what's going on, and you're doing different characters and you're taking risks with those, like just trying on part of their personality, there's a natural sort of trust fall that happens between the different players, where like I put something out there and I don't know how it's going to be received, but the most amazing part is if I'm playing with you, Todd, and you pick up the line that I put down and start to riff on it in some way, you joke with it, you take it on as your own. I'm trying to think of an example that's a good one, but
I have one for you. So I was playing in a game some years ago with a character that was a battle master character, so sort of like a master tactician, young guy.
Yeah.
Pretty naive. But one of the other characters in the party decided that she was always sort of carving. She was a ranger. She was always sort of whittling these little wooden figures and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And my character, Russien, was going into this ritual combat kind of situation, and she gave him this little wooden figurine. I was like, oh, this is such a sweet thing. Like, as a player, I'm sort of like, well, this is kind of a nice moment, to play through with that individual. And so, like, I took it, like, with the culture that he was from, that was an incredibly significant, moment that it's the equivalent of sort of like a knight's favor, or something, from the ladies. So basically, that was a commitment of like, hey, I'm really interested and invested in you and what you're doing, and you by doing this, you have to win this fight. And so like he really kind of took that on himself and went in and fought. And so that was something we hadn't rehearsed ahead of time. It wasn't anything that was sort of a planned character arc for either one of the characters, but it was sort of those interactions at the table build connection, in really interesting ways. And I love the fact that you talked about that. It's a riff. It's something like, and as the dungeon master, the runner of the game, you get to sort of create those challenging moments or environments all the time. It's one of the perks of the job.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely want to be able to bring out the best in people. And bring out those moments like you just said. That's like totally beautiful. I love that they carved a totem for you.
It was emotional. Like everybody around the table was like, oh, it was kind of sweet. Yeah.
We had something similar in a game where I was running for a group, and one of the players' characters had died and been brought back to life in a new body and didn't know who they were anymore. And they were feeling very confused. And one of the other players had a really playful character, and she said, "Your name? You have no name?" And she's like, "I don't have a name." And she goes, "No name? Okay, I give you name. Your name? Know me. You be know me." And the player was like, "I actually kind of like that." And she says, "Good. Okay, we call you it." We go on. She's playing like an old Russian halfling character. Really fun.
Okay.
And then she literally after that became Nomi, and she looked up the name Nomi and found it in
totally sweet. Yeah.
It ended up having some really great meaning for her. So that was equally sweet. But yeah, as a facilitator, I think my job is to put them in places where they can be heroes and they can have those connections. It's kind of creating an open space for that to exist.
Yeah. And I talk about this as a liminal space, and that there's a famous academician who talked about sort of like the importance of play, and Huizinga is his name. And he talks about liminal spaces. Those are places outside of the normal everyday, which totally like a gaming, session is, where you have the chance to play with identity, play with choice, be a hero, do the risky things that you probably would be very hesitant to do in real life, but you jump into the fray, with these kinds of situations. It's one of the freeing elements of storytelling.
And so if you take a group that I've actually worked with, like a client, they generally will come in feeling a little unsafe with each other, feeling a little bit used to a certain mode of operating, not really being very related to one another. So I generally get them where they're very like closed mouth at the top of a session, the very first one. And some of the exercises I do around the character are the places where I start to see people be vulnerable. Just sharing and writing is usually where I start off. Just like, tell me who your character is, where did they grow up, why did they decide to become a wizard? Like, tell me that, and think about it and give them some time to write. And then they do that and they start to share. And what's amazing is they create a whole new reality for each other of who they are and what they're about and where they're from and what their values are. And then they don't just create that and then it's like a dead thing on the wall that you're like, all right, created it, done. Like, I'm an ENFP. There you go. Like, that's who I am, defined. They then take some time and then that's when you'll see people start to loosen up. And then I take what they've written, I incorporate it into whatever setting I've kind of given them. Say, farmland, rolling farmland. And then we play the first session and they actually get to be those people. So not only have they created who they want to be, they again have the opportunity to simply be that person. And then, yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to the acting technique that I studied for many years, which is called the Meisner Technique, if anyone knows it. But it basically, the main precept is truthful behavior under imaginary circumstances. So the circumstances are imaginary, but how you act should be how you would act in real life if that was really what was going on.
The Meisner,
old Jewish guy from New York, started in the group theater.
Yeah.
He's just like I studied it for many years. It was those classes changed my life. Before any personal development courses or anything else, those classes where I could see people really being honest with each other, you know, sometimes in the, like they say acting is pretending, but I saw people being more real in there than they were in the rest of their daily lives, calling people on stuff that you would never feel courageous enough to say in the real life, admitting their real feelings about, you know, whatever. And it all is, again, it is a liminal space too, where you go in, the agreement is,
I'm not sure if I froze or if Josh froze here. Ah, all right. Well, anyways, Josh, I think you froze up for a minute on me there.
okay.
Yeah. So, and I'm sorry, you were saying the agreement is?
The agreement is that be raw, be emotional. Your imagination is going to be the truth. And, but then when you're done, you leave. And that's it. You've experienced that. And then you go out and then, oh, that's so cute. My girlfriend told me I froze. Sorry, everyone. I think my connection's normally pretty good. I don't know what happened there. Are we good now?
Yeah, you're coming through. You're a little bit blocky, but it'll probably clear up. Yep.
Okay. Strange. Well, anyway, that is, I mean, that's all I really wanted to say on it, but that's kind of where I have always, I started.
Uh-oh, here we go again. While Josh is clearing up, so one of the things that I'll say here, that I think there's a really important kernel here, for those of us who are community builders. Some of the elements of what we're trying to create around a game table, around, you know, creating trust and helping people to improvise and helping them to express identity in an environment of our creating. These lessons are broadly applicable, you know, to the kinds of things that we do as community managers, trying to do that. The dungeon master as the community manager, that they are essentially the same role. You're there as a facilitator, you're there as an arbiter of the world, and you're there to help people find things that are useful to themselves, that help solve problems. Like, I don't think players necessarily come consciously to the table thinking, I'm going to work through some issues that I have. Like, sometimes that's the case, but I think a lot of times they come to the table and they realize things about themselves through the act of playing honestly with the Meisner effect that you're describing, and, you know, the kinds of improvisational training and acting training that you've had. I think those lessons are things that I think, you know, as community builders, we need to take those things to heart, because it's about getting people to relate to each other, getting people to invest in whatever their persona happens to be in that space, and to really, you know, act honestly and start interacting with others in those kinds of situations.
Wow, what their persona happens to be in that space. That is so cool. That is, you know, what you're doing. I mean, I'm thinking about the Facebook groups I'm a part of, and like that is the honest, you know, that it is a persona. It is kind of a sliver of the person, but it's also this great mask that can express truth, just like anything else. Wow.
I wonder though if we get into trouble though. Like, I think so many of the problems with toxic social media that we have are where people are putting on a false face, but they're being disingenuous, or they're not entering into a social experience with any sense of a social contract, of that we've got to live with each other, that we're responsible for each other, that we have some kind of accountability to each other. If a game table, and this becomes really obvious around a game table, if you have people that don't trust each other or don't like each other, or are actively subverting each other by playing a character, you know, it's kind of a Matt Colville, one of the big you know, gamers in the space that does a lot of YouTube stuff. He says that's kind of being a wang rod, you know, I think is how he calls it. You know, but like, people who come in and they'll create a character, and then they'll do like really nasty things to other people around the table and say, well, it was my character, you know, to do that. But it's not. It's actually cutting against the grain of the social contract of that play space.
Yeah, I am very clear when I start with people that your main responsibility here is that everyone else at the table have fun and get the experience they're looking for. That's what I'm doing as the DM for sure, but that's what you all need to be doing And if I see someone stepping in and stepping on other people's joy or what they're here to do, that's a good reason to ask you to leave the table. And I'm not going to spend a long time trying to debate with you about stuff if it really is that you're behaving that way. So yeah, social contract is really important. I mean, I'm just thinking of a friend of mine who, God, the game is such a great litmus test for that kind of stuff. If you have a dysfunctional group, you're going to feel it in the game really palpably. I had a friend who is an amazing role player, a great storyteller, just so committed. She might actually be on here.
Hello.
Tiffany. But she had someone in her group for a year who was doing that kind of stuff, who was making subversive choices, who was doing disturbing stuff with his character, and the DM didn't feel that he had the authority to speak up and shut down that behavior. And so her experience, and it's a testament to how fun D&D is that she kept on coming back, but she came back for a year watching this guy walk over the game. And the moment that the DM stepped in and said, like, you're prioritizing yourself here and not the group, and you need to go. And he said, blah, 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 and then left. And then it was just the people who actually cared about each other and were excited to play completely changed the face of the game. Completely. Yeah. So it's a good litmus test for that. Yeah.
So this what we've just been describing here, I think any community manager ever has experienced the same kind of thing, that you get the bad faith actor, in the community who's acting up, acting out, and with utmost empathy, they probably need something. There's probably something completely unrelated that they're acting out or acting through in that process that they need. But the fact of the matter is, you're trying to build an esprit de corps, in that group. And you can't do it with that person, with where they are at that moment. And so sometimes you just have to banish them, from the space.
Yeah. That definitely is what happens. And I mean, God willing, you can step in there and have a conversation with them and put it on the table first. But I imagine that's something that I've done as a DM because I can, and it's such a small group. Mm-hmm. But if you're a community manager of a big space,
and you've got a lot of people, right,
and you're only interacting online, there's no way that you can go in there and really build that.
Absolutely. And the toxicity of a few people in a large community space can be really, poisoning to that atmosphere, or to that sense of safety about being in that space, because suddenly you've got somebody that's acting out in those ways, and nobody else wants to participate. Nobody else wants to say anything. They're not going to be willing to put themselves out there because they don't feel safe doing that. Josh, I'm wondering if we can maybe switch gears a little bit. So the playing for keeps as a business. So you're going into businesses, or businesses are approaching you and saying, "Hey, we think we want to do some team building for our organization, or we've got a goal around relationships or collaboration, or maybe there's could be a variety of use cases for this.
Yeah,
we think we'd like to do something fun like D&D, for this. I think it's awesome. Some companies may be like, why would we do that? What is up with that? What kinds of reactions, or, without naming companies, what kinds of situations have you walked into with organizations that are contemplating what you do as a service for them? And then how do you structure that as an experience for them?
Yeah. Generally there's a couple people in the organization who are very excited, and a lot of people who don't necessarily know what it is, but maybe have heard of D&D. The idea that they could fix their teams, I think, with a team that is dysfunctional in some way, I meet a lot of pessimism about that. And I think that that's just natural for being in a situation that you don't know how to fix. So I go in and I tell them what I am. And basically the great thing about D&D is that it's incredibly fun. It is like a blast. It's got great cultural cred. It's super cool. So when you pitch it to people, no matter how the team is going, I have yet to meet a team member who's like, "Oh no, I'm playing D&D." Even my most problem, quote unquote, team members are just enthusiastic. They're pumped for the first game. And I love to take that energy and then bank on that and build it in the game and get them excited, especially in that first session, building their characters, getting pumped, and building that investment. So that is that's kind of a great selling point, especially just for the kind of rank and file, for the folk who are just not the managers. They're stoked. So that's a great one. And then in terms of the managers, what's nice, for one, I get them to look at any issues that they might have with their team. And I think that's just a good place to look for people in general in terms of relationships, just it being that a lot of teams are virtual now. They're becoming more disparate. Relationships aren't built as naturally as they were when people were together. So this is a good solve for that. I think people see that like, oh yeah, sure, we play together, and that's a great solve. But I'll usually give them like a test game of some sort and see, how does this feel? Is this something that you think you guys want to try? Because a lot of people haven't seen it. And usually me showing them a video of me running a game is so enlightening. They're like, oh my God, that's how it works? Like, it's just you're having a conversation, basically. There's no video games. There's no controllers. There's no like nothing. It's just I describe a story and someone else does. So that's usually pretty enlightening. And do you want to...
Well, I was going to ask. So you set this group of people down at the table for the first time. They haven't played the game before. They don't know what to do. This is instructive for community building 101. When you get new people in a space, and they don't necessarily know each other real well, or they haven't collaborated much. Maybe they're geographically distant, but they're they're working at the same company. What's a good opening situation you like to throw them into? Like how do you get them to start to bond with each other?
Well, a couple things. Number one, that excitement is really key, and capitalizing on that in the first one and getting their investment in the story is really big. And kind of like, it's not about, we're trying to avoid people being self-conscious, I think. So giving them what they came there for is really important. So I like to do character creation if a company has the bandwidth and the time for it, because that builds so much, it's an authentic character. But and then first I make sure to get to the bottom of why they're excited to be there and a little bit about who they are, so that they can start to empathize both with the reason they're here and who they are as people, like getting related and getting excited about what we're here to do. And then after that, I'll lay out some rules, just the basic structure of how the game works, so that they know how to channel their excitement. And then I'm working on a game right now, where basically what I'll do, I like to put them in this difficult situation where their players are like political negotiators of some sort, and they've been unable to push a particular bill through for a while in this big city. And I kind of explain how this failure has been going on and that they're wandering through the streets. And then out of nowhere nearby, someone gets attacked and they have to go in and rescue them. So that's exciting, because they get to do some combat, they get to try out their character's powers, and then they find out that the person that they're there to rescue is, I know I've told you this before, but is someone who could make a big difference with their negotiations. And that kind of sets them off on their quest. So that's one that I like to do, but I find that throwing them in the deep end early is a really great way to do it. Put them in something dangerous. Don't give them too much, and then go.
I love that. And I think, sort of translating that into the community building world, give them a somewhat easy first challenge, set the stage for what the essential purpose is or the conflict happens to be in that situation, and then enable them to get an early win, to feel some confidence and then to feel some connection with each other in the space. I mean, I think, we try to apply these lessons, when people come into communities for the first time, and we don't necessarily have the benefit of saying like, well, let's create a character for you. They're putting a profile for themselves, up on that space. But one of the early things that I think most community managers will try to do is to say, like, hey, go in and complete your profile so other people can find you and relate to you and understand what your skills are and what you do. Like, so much, it's always hilarious to me, having grown up with this game and this hobby, and having great affection for it, and seeing the profound impact that it's had at a cultural level around the creation of games and on game-like activities and things that exist in social media and things that exist in our app experiences. You can't really underplay the cultural significance of what this nerdy thing that emerged from the world of war games has done for people over the years.
Yeah. It's astounding when you put it that way. I mean, you look at World of Warcraft and Skyrim and all these games that are just deeply popular with gamers right now, and they all come directly out of
Oh,
the.
yeah. Any idea of like having characters, having character health, powers, abilities, skills, all that stuff truly originated back in 1974, with the world's first role-playing game. Really incredibly powerful stuff.
Yeah.
Um, I love that sort of kind of like the opening of the situation. I know like a lot of games, a lot of role-playing games will quintessentially start with everybody in a tavern,
Yeah.
and then a fight breaks out, right? So the same kind of simplicity of like an easy first, way for people to get to know each other and have it,
Yeah. And they should be able to experiment with their powers and their abilities and start to kind of like push the different buttons that we've told them they can push, but now they need to actually do it. And the idea is getting them to sort of walk as a team and understand it. That first session is all about just take those steps and learn how you go. And what's awesome about it is it's really designed to be synergistic. Like each character has a specific role that builds on each other, that complements each other, and they'll naturally find how, because of just the design of the game itself, how they can contribute to one another and build a cadence of that. So yeah, that's
Yeah. So everybody who's playing a drinking game on the replay for this, every time you hear the word game come out, substitute the word community and take a drink. So this is fascinating to me. I think the lessons there in terms of collaboration, helping people understand their strengths through practice and through play. I think is another incredible takeaway, from this.
Yeah.
When you finish a session or when you finished a campaign with members of a company, or organization, what do you do in the recap? How do you talk to them about their experiences?
Yeah. Wait, before we go on to that, I just want to
Yeah.
say the what I love about what you're saying about community and game is I really think of this as like a series of conversations, and all you're doing when you're building a community is structuring a way for people to have conversations. And that's a lot of what this game is. You're giving them rules, you're teaching them how to engage, and you're saying go, and great stuff will happen. Like that's the promise of these games is you're going to have a dramatic moment, you're going to be a hero, but the promise of your community might be different. There might be a real promise of, if you interact with our community in this way, you will get X, Y, and Z. And I don't know what that looks like for your independent community, but it's gonna matter a lot. And you have the opportunity by setting it up in the beginning and giving people the opportunity to step into it. You're essentially creating the playing field, and then your members get to go in and activate it and wear their robot suits of armor and do what you tell them they can do and press the buttons, like it's fun.
I love that so much, and I definitely want a robot suit of armor the next time I play.
Yeah. But yeah, I know that you want to, the job of a community builder is to activate their community and make unexpected stuff happen there too. You want unexpected connections, inspiration, people taking your ball and running with it. That is exactly what I want as a dungeon master, is to give my players a premise and then to watch them do stuff that I would have never expected with it. Quick example. Last night I was running a game where they're going through this fun house, and as they get through it, they're passing these mirrors, and I tell them that the mirrors show what you look like as a child. And as you go by, it goes to your normal self, and then it goes to you in old age. So I want you to just describe.
Oh no, connection issues. Hopefully this clears up in a second here, folks. Bear with us. Josh is having a little bit of a connectivity issue. While we wait for his signal to clear up, if anybody in the on the stream has had one of these really formative learning experiences, just sitting around the table, running the game, that would be really interesting to know. Hey, there he is. He's back again.
Trying to get closer to my router. I'm so sorry, everyone.
That's all right, man.
Unexpected. Okay. Hopefully that will clear it up. But yeah. Anyway. So what I was saying was, as they're going through this funhouse mirror, one of the players describes as he's getting older, he says, and then all of a sudden my image disappears. And I'm like, oh, I wasn't expecting that. I thought he was just going to describe it. So I'm like, okay, yeah. And you look into the mirror and you don't, like, you see like a body in a swamp and you're not really sure what that means, but you can just see it going out into the distance.
Nice.
And he's like, cool. So we just created something there. I definitely didn't expect that. And it sets up, because I know they're going to go to a swamp in the future, it sets up an interesting moment for this community, this story, this conversation to continue to evolve, for something for us to go towards. And I don't know, that's just,
I think that's wonderful. Yeah. Really neat. And again, you're posing a creative challenge. You know, here's you as a child, here's you now, and here's you in the future. What do those look like? That's a perfect discussion prompt, you know, for getting people to get involved and sort of be creative, and also an invitation for maybe how each of those people interact with each other, you know, as a result of seeing those images themselves, and then maybe reacting to the other people around them. Like,
yeah,
I didn't see a future self for myself. Oh no, what does this mean?
Yeah. And then to go back to what you were talking about with, you know, reflections, I'll call them on things. One thing that I think a lot of groups have a tough time doing in the beginning is relating to each other in the narrative. They're fine relating to my prompts and relating to me, but in terms of having conversations with each other. And so with that particular group, calling that out and being like, hey, I just noticed that you guys are great with this, but you don't always build on each other's ideas when someone does something. You don't do that in character. I think that you should try that and see what happens, because it could open up bigger possibilities that you wouldn't have seen before, you know, and giving them that kind of feedback is really important, because it does translate to the business space.
It does. And this is not something we'll typically do around the gaming table, because everybody's just there to have a good time, unless there's some kind of problematic behavior or something around the table, like stuff we discussed earlier. But I think like the immediate visible, powerful context of this for business people, you know, who need to relate to each other as a team anyways. You know, I think again, it's that experience of working with each other, seeing how they do things. And I think those tendencies, again, it's that idea of the stained glass window and the light shining through it. I can see if you're somebody that prefers to go out on your own to do things, or I can see if you're the person who screws up every plan. Like we all sat around the table and we came up with this great tactical plan for going in and invading this tower or whatever, and taking out the bad guys. But then there's one person that always comes in and screws up the situation.
Yeah.
I mean, that's super instructive if you're talking about group collaboration, and taking it to that level of abstraction in this play environment. It's a little easier to talk about that, because you can kind of say, like, you know, if your character is Grog, the warrior, you can say like, well, you know, like Grog really doesn't listen to anybody else, you know, in the group. And I realized like maybe that's part of what you're playing here, but you know, you might want to kind of get along a little better with some of the other players around the table.
Yeah. Because you're only going to be able to achieve whatever you're here to achieve if you're doing that as a group. I mean, again, we talked about D&D as a litmus test. There are situations that a party of players, if you call a group party, in D&D terms, if they are underpowered and low on resources, but they're amazing at communicating, they can punch way above their weight class.
They can. Yeah. See it again and again. Right.
Oh, so cool too. Like that's the moment that everyone cheers for, that everyone gets up. It's like watching a sport. Like it is as exciting as tennis or basketball or whatever, where like you're watching every moment and that dice roll comes down. Everyone's like, oh my God. Like it's exciting to do that. And then well, go ahead.
Oh, it totally is. I mean, for anybody that's watched Stranger Things, the latest season, like there's a terrific moment of that, like where it all comes down to a single die roll from one of the young women playing around the table, and you can kind of see this, you know, moment where the DM kind of rolls the die towards the screen, and it's sort of tumbling, and it ends up like a 20. It's a 20-sided die, so 20 is like a really great. That's like the perfect result, and everybody around the table cheers. That's not really too dramatized. That kind of stuff happens around the table on a regular basis.
Yeah, on a regular basis. It is great to see people make choices and take risks. But anyway, so they'll punch above their weight. They can punch way above their weight class, and that's very exciting. And then on the flip side, if you have a team that is well equipped to deal with a problem, but they are not communicating well, they're all going off on their own, they're not listening, there's no coordination, they're stepping on each other's toes, like they can get knocked out by, a handful of enemies that otherwise would have been easy to handle, or any kind of situation.
And the great thing about that is they're doing it in this liminal space, and they can see what happens when they get the bloody nose, when the party gets knocked out, or everybody, worst case, everybody gets killed in that situation. They can laugh it off and say, wow, I guess we should have worked better together. And wow, recognition, suddenly an understanding of like, we need to work better together.
It's easier to own those mistakes when the consequences aren't so dire and you're not going to feel blamed for the failure of the company or a project.
Yeah.
No, well said. But the consequences are still there and they are still felt, which I think is really special. You can walk away from a table feeling like, because there's no replay, there's no restart. Like, let me try that again and just do it one more time in a video game.
It's not like a respawn in a video game. You can't replay the session again.
You just live with the consequences of your actions now spill out into the rest of the story, into next session and the session after. And frankly, for me as the story master, that's amazing. I love having failure for fodder, because nothing motivates a team to overcome something better than their own shortcomings.
I want to trademark that phrase, failure for fodder. That's terrific.
Give it to Matt Cole, though. Actually, okay, we're trademarking it. That's playing for keeps. That's officially playing.
There you go. Now you got it. I can't believe we're at 45 minutes already. You and I obviously could talk about this stuff all day. We could do like a marathon session, but I know you have another stream coming up this afternoon. You want to give that a quick plug?
Yeah, thank you. So I have a stream at 12:30 p.m. Pacific today. That's just kind of like an open Q&A. And there's actually going to be a link for anyone to join, or you can ask questions in the chat if you want to. But I fully would love to have people just on having a conversation like with me and Todd here. And you can ask me about my business, how it works, what options might work for your company, etc. Or just chat about D&D, which is, as you can tell, like something I can do a lot.
You and me both, my friend.
Yeah.
Josh, absolute pleasure to have you on the show. You are welcome back anytime. I feel like there's so much correspondence to talk about, between this hobby and the whole community building world. There's a lot here. But I'm also just extremely excited about your business. You're doing something innovative and new, and that I think can help a lot of organizations. I don't know, if anybody's kind of looks at future foresight studies, but I know the Institute for the Future, one of the things I saw, back when the pandemic was happening, they were talking about how more organizations need to embrace full spectrum thinking, including incorporating more games and gaming and simulation into their work environments. This goes right into that idea. I am deadly serious about games and gaming, and any organization that dismisses those as silliness are doing themselves a disservice, quite frankly. And so I am ecstatic that you are going into organizations, bringing the joy and fun of what this game is, and teaching real lessons and real life lessons that can benefit and help organizations to thrive. And those lessons around community building are really well taken. I wish you all the success with Playing for Keeps. Hope to see you again on the show soon.
Thank you, Todd. I could not agree more.
Well, wonderful. And for those of you tuning in on the live stream, thank you for sticking with us. If you stuck with us through the show, I know Josh will be delighted to respond to any comments that you happen to drop up there. I will respond as well. And if you catch this on the replay, of course, we would love your questions as well. Don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube, and tune in for our next upcoming episode. I'm going to have Donnie Weinstein is going to be, and I probably just botched the pronunciation of his name. He's been on the show before, and it's just going to be updating us on the latest that he's working on in the community building world. We're going to have a blast of a conversation. He was terrific the last time around, and I hope that you'll be able to join us for that. It's going to be on Friday, October the 28th, coming up on Halloween, and 10 a.m. Central Time. And so you can sign up for that through the Clocktower Advisors events list on LinkedIn. And of course, you can always catch us on YouTube and Twitter, where we simultaneously stream out as well. So with that said, we are heading into the weekend. Go do something fun, maybe play a game, and be with family, be with friends, but take this time to recharge yourselves. And I will see you back here in a couple of weeks. In the meantime, Josh, thanks again. I'll check out the stream this afternoon. All right.
All right.